will start with the first experiment, which is sugar sweetened starches. So for this experiment, the objectives will be to detect sugars that are present in some starches and to determine if the fibers in some starches inhibit the ability to detect sugars.
The materials that we will use are skyflakes as a soda cracker, rice cake,
and we use Ribisco crackers as a rye crisp type of 100% whole grain crackers, and a glass of water. So let's start.
okay?
For the evaluation in this experiment, we tackled it as a group and it resulted to the following conclusions. Since the digestion starts in the mouth, we have noticed that there is a change in the taste as the residue of the cracker leaves our mouth.
As we chew on the first cracker, you can really taste the mild saltiness of it. After swallowing and chewing another cracker, some of the residue from the last cracker that we have swallowed remains on our mouths. That is why we think that it influences the taste of the next cracker, because we have perceived a subtle shift in the taste as some of the starch in the cracker is converted into sugar.
There is a quite similarities when it comes to the tastes of the skyflakes and Ribisco crackers. Aside from the similarities in taste, we have noticed that they were both dry as we chew on them. The skyflakes or the soda cracker has a mild saltiness and has a stronger taste compared to the whole grain cracker or the Ribisco, which has a mild and plain taste and flavor. The steamed rice cake or the puto is different from both because it has a very soft, fluffy, and tasty consistency. Since it also has the most sugar content, it tastes very sweet as the residue leaves our mouth.
Cookie starches like steamed rice cake, cooked rice, barley, and many more absorbs water, which gives it a soft texture and consistency. It also increases the total sugar content since it melts and breaks down sugar and it becomes sweeter compared to those that are not cooked.
We can conclude that the length of time it takes for a cracker to start to taste sweet in your mouth determines the percentage of carbohydrate your diet should contain. The longer it takes for the cracker to taste sweet, the lower your carb intake should be. This information can help people that are health conscious and are on a diet. We have found out that sugar can help a lot in new product and recipe development since it provides functions as well as flavor. That is why it can be used in removing calories and even reducing the sweetness for new recipe formulation possibilities. That is all, and thank you.
Let us now proceed to our next experiment, which is all about fibers. The objective of this experiment is to compare and contrast the insoluble fibers in breads.
The materials we're going to use for this experiment are the white bread and the whole wheat bread.
For the procedure, first, take a scoop out of the inside of one slice of bread. Next, try to form a bow with it using the palms of your hands. Repeat this exercise with each other slices of bread.
application. We proved in this experiment that when we rubbed the whole wheat bran into a ball, the bread were easily crumbled because it contains only short fibers, while when we did it to white bread, it formed a semi-solid ball when compacted. Culinary applications. This experiment is a great help to invent a new type of bread that contains the same characteristics of wheat and white bread to balance it.
Again, good day to our beloved professor, Ms. Lastin Chan Magtibay. And now let's move on to our next experiment. The objective of this experiment will be explained by Mr. Carlo Daniel.
To become familiar with different types of flour, gluten, and gluten content.
For the materials, we will be having a bread flour and a all-purpose flour. And we will be needing two bowls for each type of flour, a measuring cup, a parchment paper, a place where we will be needing the dough, and a oven. In addition, we will be using a cheesecloth or a strainer.
Based on the procedure, what we're going to do next is to put 1 cup each of flour in these 2 different bowls. So, let's begin.
What we're going to do next is to put 1/2 cup of water into each bowls. What I have here is an all-purpose flour.
Me, I have a bread flour. Still soft, yet rubbery. Since the dough is okay now, we're going to let it rest for at least 10 minutes. There will be a milky texture after we pour cold water into it.
This is the all-purpose flour. And this is the bread flour.
As we pour cold water to each dough, the bread flour produces milky water, while the all-purpose flour did not produce any milky water. This is because bread flour has more gluten content, which indicates that the bread flour has the more gluten content.
In terms of texture, there are differences between the two. The all-purpose flour is easier to knead than the bread flour, while the bread flour is a bit sticky while kneading it. While in sizes, there is also difference in size. The all-purpose is bigger than the bread flour.
After baking the dough for about 15 to 20 minutes, we can see the difference before and after cooking it. After cooking, the dough becomes larger. Yet, as we can see, the all-purpose flour is a little bit bigger than the bread flour. And if we're going to touch it, the bread flour is way more fluffy and airy.
Simply substituting a gluten-free flour for all-purpose flour in baked goods doesn't always work. Because gluten is a structural protein, the products are often very tender and even crumbly if you just replace the flour that's called for in the recipe with gluten-free flour. On the other hand, cakes like spiced carrot cake with cream cheese frosting, breads, scones, and other baked goods with a gluten flour require some structural assistance from a binder.
Let us now move on to our fifth experiment, which is all about carbohydrates on the food labels. The objectives of this experiment is to identify sugar, starches, and fibers on food labels, and also to determine if foods are an excellent, an average, or a poor source of fiber.
The materials we're going to use in this experiment are two food labels from breakfast cereals, including the nutrition facts panel and the list of ingredients.
For the procedure, make a copy of the following information for each of the breakfast cereals: serving size, calories per serving, total carbohydrate, dietary fiber, sugars, and the percentage of the daily value of total carbohydrate and fiber.
For the evaluation of the experiment, first letter A, both breakfast cereals have the same serving sizes. First, the Gold Corn Flakes breakfast cereal has 30 gram and also Cocoa Crunch breakfast cereal has 30 gram serving size. Letter B, on the first breakfast cereal, which is Gold Corn Flakes, the ingredients which contains carbohydrate are cereal grains, whole grain, sugar, barley malt extract, glucose syrup, emulsifier, and vitamins. And the ingredients that contain sugar are barley malt extract, sugar, glucose syrup, emulsifier, and vitamin B6. Next, on the other breakfast cereal, which is Cocoa Crunch, the ingredients that contain carbohydrate are cereal grains, wheat flour, sugar, cocoa powder, barley malt extract, emulsifier, and vitamins. And the ingredients of Cocoa Crunch that contain sugar are barley malt extract, sugar, emulsifier, cocoa powder, and vitamin B6. For letter C, Cocoa Crunch contains more sugar than Gold Corn Flakes because Cocoa Crunch contains 8.1 gram of sugar while Gold Corn Flakes contains 3.0 gram of sugar. Letter D, Gold Corn Flakes contains more carbohydrates than Cocoa Crunch because Gold Corn Flakes has 24.5 gram of carbohydrates while Cocoa Crunch has 23 gram of carbohydrates. And when it comes to fiber, Cocoa Crunch contains more fiber than Gold Corn Flakes because Cocoa Crunch contains 2.3 gram of fiber compared to Gold Corn Flakes that only contains 1.0 gram of fiber. Letter E, Cocoa Crunch has 7.67% of carbohydrates and 9.2% of fiber based on their daily values, while Gold Corn Flakes has 8.17% of carbohydrates and 4% of fiber based on their daily values. So these are the comparison of remaining daily values of both cereals and which of their daily values are noteworthy. First is the Cocoa Crunch daily values. For protein, it have 4.8%, fat 1.38%, cholesterol 0.1%, sodium 1.88%, vitamin B6 100%, iron 77.78%, calcium 52.8%. And for the gold corn flakes, protein 0.40%, fat 0.92%, cholesterol 0.1%, sodium 9.96%, vitamin B6 25%, iron 18.89%, and lastly the calcium 16.8%.
For the last experiment, we have carbohydrate substitutes. The objectives are first to determine the presence of sugar substitutes in beverages. Second is to compare the taste and solubility of sugar substitutes to white sugar in beverages.
The materials that we will use are stevia and organic cocoa sugar that dissolve in cold liquid,
Table sugar, unsweetened iced tea, glasses and teaspoons. For the procedure, I will fill each glass with 12 ounces of unsweetened iced tea.
I will add stevia on the first glass of unsweetened iced tea. Next, organic cocoa sugar.
And last is I will put 2 teaspoons of white sugar in the last unsweetened tea and stir it well.
For our evaluation, since the unsweetened tea is cold, it takes time for the sugar to dissolve. As we put the sugar on each of the glass, cocoa sugar dissolves first, then followed by stevia sugar, and lastly, white sugar. After we put stevia on the unsweetened iced tea, it dissolves in just a minute. While the table sugar does not immediately dissolve, after stirring, there's still granules left. The cocoa sugar affect the appearance of the unsweetened iced tea, which it has a brownish color and it also melted instantly, while the table sugar does not affect to the color of unsweetened iced tea and it is harder to melt compared to cocoa sugar.
After we tasted all of the unsweetened tea, mixed with the sugar substitutes and table sugar, the tea with the stevia sugar tastes like a normal tea with a little sweetness and a menthol flavor. Because that kind of sugar, as we add the 1 stick of it, is equivalent to sweetness to 1 level of teaspoon of sugar. While the other tea with white sugar tastes much sweeter than the first one. because we added 2 teaspoons of it. And lastly, the unsweetened tea with the cocoa sugar has a different taste compared to the first two.
Comparing the taste of the unsweetened tea with a cocoa and stevia sugar to the white sugar, since the substitute stevia sugar is healthy and made from the leaves of a stevia plant, it tastes like unsweetened tea added with the white sugar but with a menthol taste, while the cocoa sugar has a bitter taste compared to the white sugar since cocoa sugar is a palm sugar produced from the flower bud stem of the coconut palm that is naturally has a highly toasted and smoky taste.